Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Artsbeat Radio and TV. I'm Mark Auerbach, your host. Peter Coles is our chief engineer this morning. My guest today is Lucinda Kidder, who's a co-founder and director at the Silverthorne Theater Company, a professional theater company in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and the only theater company that operates year-round in Franklin County. And one of the things I've got to start with is Lucinda and I have known each other for years because we both went to Northfield Mount Hermon. I wore a Northfield Mount Hermon shirt in honor of your appearance today because I didn't see any Silverthorne swag available.
No, we don't have that yet.
As yet. But Silverthorne Theater started several years ago, actually on the campus of Northfield Mount Hermon, where there's an art center and a nice theater. And since they've moved to Greenfield, which is a kind of having a renaissance of sorts with the downtown area, a new theater and performing arts center downtown. There's lots of restaurants. You can take the train there now.
Yes, you can.
And I just am so interested to learn about how Silverthorne started and how it got to where it is.
Well, basically, we started as an NMH sort of creation, actually. David Rowland, who taught theater at NMH for 35 years and recently had retired. This is back in 2013. I had just moved back to the area from Seattle, and he and I sat down together talking about theaters in the area, and he mentioned that a Northfield Mount Hermon headmaster had once asked him what he thought about the idea of starting a professional summer theater on the campus of NMH. And David said, well, why don't we do that? We would operate in the summer, but that we would also, both of us would be teaching in the NMH summer school, and we would use our students as interns in some of these professional productions. We did intend that this should be a professional level theater, and that meant that we would be paying our actors and technicians and so on. And as it turned out, David's class did not fill that summer. I did teach, but I was teaching the younger students. So we wound up not using any of the students at all in our productions, but we did put on our first two productions on the NMH stage in the Child's Theater, and did two summer shows, and turned out to be quite popular. But the school decided that this was not, partly because of liability issues, but also partly because we weren't able to really blend it in with the school programming. They decided that this was not a good match for them. So we moved over to Greenfield Community College and had 2 seasons over there. They were very kind to us. We did 2 summer seasons, of course. Because it's an academic institution, we were restricted to that.
Right.
Yep. But we decided, we were continuing to expand. We expanded to 3 shows when we were over there, 3 season shows. And they turned out to be very successful in a lot of ways, at least artistically. We had some very good acting. We actually had run a new play contest. And we performed one of the plays that we chose out of over 425 that were submitted to us from all over the world. So that was our 2nd season. Our 3rd season, we were at GCC, but again, our audiences were not developing. So basically, we thought about the possibility of moving into town, because I don't know if folks down here know where GCC, the Greenfield Community College, is, but it's rather remote from
remote from downtown Greenfield,
Yes, it is. It's just off of the Mohawk Trail, sort of. So then the opportunity came to do a show at what used to be called the Arts Block, right in the hub of downtown Greenfield. And that show was absolutely marvelously successful. It was the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged, which is, if you're familiar with it, it's one of the funniest comedies going, and it was a tremendous success. Plus, we were right down in the middle of all the restaurants, and we had a wonderful space to work in, which was the 4th floor of that facility. And, the rest is history. That's where we moved to, and that's where we perform now.
And how many shows do you do a year now?
We have gone to a 4-show season, and that has worked out very well for us. We're going to stay with that, but actually next year we're shifting we've been doing a calendar year season, but not. We started avoiding the summers actually because we find that there's so much competition from other theaters in the summer. We've got the Berkshires, and Greenfield really isn't a tourist destination yet at this point. So as far as we've shifted now, we're going to be running our next year from 2020 to 2021. In other words, starting in September and going through May. And this coming season, this coming April, I should say, we're going to be having a short and sweet tiny play festival. And that's we had another competition. We asked people to send in their short plays. We got over 711 plays to read, and it was quite impressive. So that's going to be sort of bridging the gap between the end of this year's season, which is happening right now, and then the start of next year, which will be happening next September.
Now
It's a little confusing.
Yeah, you just ended the season
Yes.
with the Diary of Anne
That's
Frank.
correct.
But your mix of play, you've done musicals, you had the Fantastics, you did a world premiere musical based on Tartuffe,
That's correct.
and there's new stuff and old stuff. Who picks the plays?
We actually have a play selection committee, and it's made up of some of us who are, myself, for example, I was on that. But we have members of the community, pretty much people, they have to be somewhat savvy about theater, and we ask that, we hope that they will have done work with theaters on our level. And also people who go to other theaters, people who go to see theaters, so that we can have lots of good suggestions coming in. We like to find new plays, but we also do recognize the value of doing older plays. For example, we did a revival of The Miser, Molière's The Miser, which was an adaptation that had been done in London. It was relatively contemporary, and that's the sort of thing we're looking for. A mix. When we did a show called, and I can't really say it on the air, Stupid Effing Bird.
Yes.
Which is actually an adaptation of the Chekhov's
Right,
The Seagull. And that was a marvelously fun play. But again, something that blends the old and the new is lovely, but then there are older plays that you just do as is, and you just have very good people doing them, and they come out wonderfully.
How did you get into theater?
I've done it all my life. I actually started my first play that I could consider other than being a carrot in an elementary school play was at Northfield Mount Hermon, actually when it was Northfield School for Girls, which I attended. And this would have been in 1959 when I was a sophomore at Northfield School. There was an auditorium there called Silverthorne Auditorium. And it was an all-girls play. I was the stage manager. I've never been an actor particularly, and that's where I started off. And I later on went abroad. I studied psychology in college because there wasn't a theater major at the college that I went to. But then later, after teaching in India, I took the GREs and went back to Emerson College into theater education. And it's just been straight ahead theater as much as I could for the rest of my life.
And so many talented people in not only theater but broadcasting have come out of Emerson.
Yes, it's a
And
great
oddly
place.
enough, we both went to Northfield Mount Hermon. I had a little bit of theater experience before I went to Northfield Mount Hermon, and then I did a couple of plays there, but there was two teachers that pushed me, and I ended up majoring in theater in college and going into a professional performance career. But I had a lot of theatrical stage experience and music experience at Northfield Mount Hermon, and there were other people. Uma Thurman.
Oh, of course.
Was Northfield Mount Hermon, Laura Linney. So that school has produced quite a few theater people, both on stage and behind the scenes.
That's right. It absolutely has. Of course, in my day, it was much less sophisticated because we didn't even get to play on the same stage as boys, because remember, this was a girls' school at the time until your junior and senior year. So there wasn't the wealth of having the facilities now at NMH. It's just made all the difference. It's really made it possible.
I had a chance to go back a couple of years ago and see a production of a musical called Curtains at the Rhodes Art Center at Northfield Mount Herman. And I was surprised, first of all, at how great a facility it was, because when we were in school, we performed the big musicals at the auditorium on the Northfield campus that was used as a site for large religious gatherings. It was no theater at all, but it is the home of their Sacred Concert, which is an annual event that people from all over the area go to attend. But to see the Rhodes Art Center is a beautiful small theater, and technically it's state-of-the-art on every level. And I guess that the students there, not only in theater but in dance, really get a workout. And the arts are much more important now than they were then.
Absolutely. I mean, we really didn't have the facilities, and that's what you really have to have, is something to be able to train students for the kinds of conditions that they're going to see later on in life, and it makes it much more close to a regular professional, or even a semi-pro type of experience.
Yeah, in Berkshire County, the Berkshire Theater Group is known for nurturing the talent of the local high schools, and every year in the spring they have a performance called Encore, and they take there's 10 high schools in the county. They each present 10 minutes of their school musical or their school play, and I've been to that, and because theater is emphasized and music is emphasized in those public schools, a lot of talent comes out of it because these kids get 4 years of plays and musicals. In the Pioneer Valley, it's not quite the same. We have that charter school that focuses on the arts, but it seems to be the prep schools that have the stronger theater programs than the public high schools.
They do, and in fact, Greenfield High School doesn't have a theater program at all. They have a wonderful big auditorium that's equipped with all the latest stuff, and they do not have a theater program. It's almost like they dropped a little bit too much money on the facility itself, and then the actual staffing for it. It's not there. I've actually worked at Northampton High School. I directed a couple of shows there at one time, and they have a pretty good program there. They have a full-time theater teacher there. So it's not completely devoid. And Amherst High School, of course, also has a pretty good program. But the Franklin County is quite devoid of that sort of programming. And that's one of the reasons that we thought that Silverthorne should stay in that area. GCC, of course, has a theater program, but he's even there. The professor is not full-time.
So the fact that you're performing and based in downtown Greenfield, does the city see the economic value of having creative industry in Greenfield? I mean, I know that there's a lot of pottery places and art places, and Shelburne Falls, just down the road, so to speak, has become renowned as a center for the creative economy. I mean, movies even go there to film. But do the powers that be in Greenfield recognize what you're bringing to the city?
I'm not sure that they do yet, but we're still relatively young. We've been there. We're completing our third season in downtown Greenfield. But I know that the Recorder newspaper this year seems to have recognized it, because that's the Greenfield Recorder. They gave us a very substantial season sponsorship, for which we were very grateful. Plus, we get pretty good coverage from them, and we get good coverage from the Montague Reporter. So I think it's building. Our audience is building, and as we've done surveying and so forth, we find that about a third of our audience is Greenfield-based, Greenfield or in Franklin County. Well, we do, of course, get other people coming up from Northampton and Amherst, and farther away. This last show, because one of our actors had performed down in Connecticut, we're having this massive influx of Connecticutans coming in.
And the actor who played Anne Frank,
that's right,
was from Longmeadow, I believe.
She's from Longmeadow, and her father had actually performed the role of Otto Frank in a Connecticut production of it. And that's, again, that connection between all of the that family. So we've had wonderful. It's lovely to have so many people coming in and being able to see our facility, to see what we've done with it, and to see how we operate, because we hold a very high standard of performance.
And a lot of your actors are professional actors.
Oh,
I know
yes.
one of your directors is Chris Roman,
Sure.
is an arts reporter colleague of mine. He is one of the best arts reporters in the Valley, writes for the
really
Valley
is.
Advocate, a column called Stage Struck.
Yes,
And we've
yes.
done, Chris and I have done programs together. In fact, he came and did an Arts Beat radio when he was directing something for Silverthorne, but he directs there regularly.
He does. He's actually on our play selection committee. So he feels that in some respects he really can't review us anymore because he's become too embedded in our fabric. But yeah, he directed the production of Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris and came to us with a proposal to do that. And that was the first time we'd ventured into a musical. We really had not expected ever to do a musical because partly we started as quite a shoestring theater, and of course musicals are extremely expensive to produce from the standpoint of generally the size of the cast and also the royalties and that sort of thing, plus paying extra musicians, music directors. It's a whole nother ballgame, but we had great success with that. So when the Tartuffe, the Jeff Olmsted's adaptation of Tartuffe, the musical adaptation came along, Chris directed that too.
How did that come to you?
Chris actually proposed it, and I think Jeff actually reached out to me personally and, said, did I think we would be interested? And at first, I really didn't think so much that this would be something that we might want to do, but the more I listened to it and the more I saw what an incredible, they did have a stage sing of the musical at the Helen Hills Chapel at Smith at 1 year. And then I saw that, and I saw the potential for the comedy in it. It's just very, very funny, but also the music was very interesting. It had a lot to recommend it, and it just seemed like the sort of thing that we might want to do. Plus, Silverthorne likes to pride itself on doing things that kind of brings up issues, sort of things that people will think about to provoke discussion. And so Tartuffe, when you really look at it, is all about religious hypocrisy. Get my teeth back in here.
That's a hard one to say.
It is a hard one to say. And so that, when you look at that story, it is 1700s, and yet it's so contemporary. The religious hypocrisy and the greed too. There was a tremendous amount of greed involved in it, and so it seemed to fit right into the tenor of the times.
Indeed, it does. We've got to take a short break here to acknowledge our underwriters. We're chatting all about the Silverthorne Theater Company in Greenfield with Lucinda Kidder, who's their co-founder. If people want information while we take this break, how can they learn more about Silverthorne?
Well, our website is https. It's silverthornetheater.org.
Okay, silverthornetheater.org.
Yes.
And is it theater ER or
It's
RE?
ER, and that does throw people off.
ER, but there can't be another Silverthorne Theater anywhere else.
Actually, there is.
There is.
And I need to warn your listeners, don't check to see whether it's in Colorado or not. We are not in Colorado. We are in Massachusetts.
There's Greeley, Colorado, but there's Greenfield, Massachusetts.
There's Silverthorne in Colorado.
Okay.
Actually.
Well,
Yeah.
check out the one in Massachusetts in Greenfield, up I-91 or on the
Route 2.
New Valley Flyer rail service.
Yes.
I'm Mark Auerbach. This is ArtSpeak Radio. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. And next week, we're going to be talking with Tracy Flater from Playhouse on Park in West Hartford, Connecticut, that does a mix of plays and musicals. And they're just finished their 10th anniversary season. And we'll be right back after we acknowledge our underwriters of programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB and Channel 15 Comcast Westfield Community Programming. We'll be right back.
Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. This is ArtsBeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach, your host. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We're in brand new studio here at Westfield Technical Academy. Some of the people that are working on the show behind the scenes are students here who are learning the art and science of broadcasting, both for radio and television. And it's a great new home for us, and we are glad to be here. My guest today is Lucinda Kidder, who's the co-founder of the Silverthorne Theater Company that had its start at our collective alma mater, Northfield Mount Hermon School, for which I wore a NMH T-shirt, and then moved to Greenfield, where Silverthorne has become one of the regular performing companies in downtown Greenfield at the new Performing Arts Center there. Right. So, when we went to the break, you said you had a play festival coming up in early in 2020.
Right.
So you have a group of people that you're reading something like 700 scripts.
We did.
Yeah. So how many did you whittle it down to?
We whittled it down to 22. And fortunately, we had several rounds because we had to do elimination, obviously. So some plays that perhaps somebody really felt strongly about went by the wayside because somebody else hated it. So, when you have a group of 6 people trying to decide what to choose, it's always matters of opinion. But we all felt quite strongly that we have a really good variety of very short plays that, as I said, it's called the Short and Sweet Tiny Play Festival. The dates for that are April 23rd through May 9th. And the shape of the festival is going to be that we will have 2 weekends of probably 10 to 11 plays each, all done by the same ensemble cast, but different ensembles each weekend, and one director for each weekend. And then for the third weekend, we will have the reprise and we will do the voting. The audience will get to vote on their top favorites from each weekend, and we will choose those that get the most votes, and we will repeat those, the top 10 or so.
Are all the playwrights local or regional?
No, not at all. They when we sent out the call, it literally we came in from Australia, New Zealand, everywhere, South America, all over the place. I mean, it's and all over the United States too. One of the things that we have found out is that the playwrights are they must always be online, I swear, when they're not writing their plays, because the minute you send out a call, they come streaming in. And we've also learned the hard way to limit the number of plays that we allow people to send in, because one person sent in 16 different plays.
Oh my gosh. When we went back into programming this fall, we had Ben Scranton from Springfield, who is an actor who wrote a play that was presented and produced at the Pittsburgh New Play Festival and actually became a finalist. I don't know at this point whether it won for Best Production, but it got incredible reviews in the media there and probably has a life after it. But he said he spends a good part of his day scoping out where these festivals are. So people are writing plays, and theater, as we both know, oftentimes tackles amazing current events and issues in a way that other art forms can't do. And, for example, the whole issue of white privilege and racism is on stage at TheaterWorks in Hartford right now in their play American Son, which premiered at Barrington Stage before it went to Broadway. And what are the themes that these playwrights are writing about right now? Is it across the board, or do they have issues that they really want to put on stage?
There are a lot of issues, and we do look for that because we don't want just fluff pieces. That's not something that we like comedy very much, but we also feel that you want to have some sort of an edge to it, something that will capture people's imaginations. I would have to say that we came up with several plays that dealt with a couple of one that had dealt with suicide. At various ages, for example, teen suicide, adult suicide. We had 2 ledge plays, we called them, because they both dealt with somebody, a couple of people who were contemplating jumping off ledges. And of course, that can be a funny sort of situation in the sense that whatever, depending on the outcome, obviously.
Yeah.
But then we also have plays that deal with aging, with developing dementia or Alzheimer's, with debilitating illnesses. We also have some that are on the gender themes. We had one marvelous play that is going to be part of it that involves 2. It actually combines 2, you might say. A gay couple who's trying to get up to the place where in their town hall, where they were going to be married by the town clerk, and there's no access, and one of the partners is in a wheelchair. So you have them trying to get themselves up to where they're going to get married, being completely frustrated by this. But so it's sort of combining, a relationship that is contemporary. A lot of these things have that kind of sort of quirky angle into a situation, so that it's not kind of a in-your-face sort of thing, but presents it in a thoughtful way, presents an issue in a thoughtful way. And I should say that we made a point of being sure that we gave local playwrights extra points, you might say. We really considered them in a much deeper way than we might have somebody, say, from New Zealand. And we had an Irish play, for example, which was lovely, but it's also, Ireland is just not our territory particularly. So
these, will the playwrights be attending these?
We will invite them. We actually we're coming up on our final series, our play reading series called Theater Thursdays. We've had 8 plays now that we have done readings of, and they are all new plays, plays that have not been performed anywhere else. And we've had wonderful luck with those, and we've had several, and most of them are actually local playwrights. And the playwrights have been there, and they have taken feedback. We get evaluation sheets, so it's a great way for people to get feedback on their writing.
Now, when they do, when you do a new play, are out-of-town people and agents coming up to look at?
We haven't had that happen yet, and which is a shame, because we did a play during our 2018 season called White, Black, and Blue, and as a matter of fact, the playwright lives in Westfield. His name is Steve Henderson, and I'm pretty sure it's Westfield that he lives in. Anyway, it was a wonderful new play. He partnered with another playwright named Will Chalmers, and it presented issues of racism and police brutality, and it was tremendously successful. It was, and it got discussion. We had discussions after each one of the performances. It should have been scoped out. We honestly are not necessarily in a position to know who to. We invite critics in. We do have Berkshire on Stage now does cover us, and we're looking for other critics. But the Valley is pretty sparse with people who will actually come and write up plays.
Yeah, it is. There are. I think I'm on the Berkshire Theater Critics Association, and in fact, the Berkshire's awards were called the Berkeys are happening.
Yes, we had people from them come to one of our shows this summer. Yes.
And there are maybe 30 arts reporters in Western Massachusetts. I think that I'm the only one that's specifically broadcast.
Oh, okay.
Although I do write, for Westfield News Group, and there's so much theater going on, and there's such limited space available to print the reviews. And like the Westfield News had said to me, we want you to review shows if when your review is coming out, the show is still running.
Oh,
But
Yeah.
they don't have the space to review something that's a one-nighter.
Right, of
So
course.
it limits a lot of us in what we can do, and there's so much to cover.
yeah.
So, I mean, I find myself, having to pick and choose. I can't cover 4 shows a week. I mean, physically, it's exhausting.
Of course.
With a day job. But I know that Silverthorne has been on my radar for a long time, but it's just been very difficult for me to get up there to see
Long hike.
something. Yeah. Going back, you said you went to Emerson and you studied theater education. What kind of work have you done in theater education prior to starting Silverthorne?
Well, I actually started a lot of other theaters. Excuse me. I've taught in a lot of different places. I've taught in high schools. I worked with groups in Boston while I was still at Emerson, doing children's theater. I worked with the Charles Playhouse when I was at Emerson, and I started a children's theater there. We performed right on the same stage as the Equity Company. That was at the time when the Charles Playhouse was not a Blue Man Group location.
Right.
And we started a theater there, and I've done all kinds of community theater, elementary school, high school teaching, all that kind of thing. But I think my career turned around quite dramatically when I went to UMass to get my MFA. That was back in 1999. I had just finished teaching at NMH as filling in for David Rowland, my co-founder, when he took a sabbatical year. I went to UMass in the theater program as a director, and just being introduced to contemporary modes and techniques of theater was really a fantastic. I recommend it to everybody over 60. Go back to school, get another degree. It's a terrific thing, because as a result, I learned a lot of new playwrights. I learned a lot of new approaches, and it was a terrific experience for me. And I directly, essentially, I would not have even attempted to do Silverthorne without having had that background.
Do you recall what play or musical you saw where you said, "I've got to do this"?
Oh my goodness, Sweeney Todd, I guess, was one of them. I did direct Sweeney Todd back in the day. That was in the 80s, I guess it was. Did that for a very high level community theater called the Curtain Call Theater in Braintree, on the South Shore. And this was a company that had resources. It was amateur, but I had a 17-piece orchestra. And it's the one time I've been reviewed by Boston papers, because it was just one of those incredible things. Sweeney Todd was the fantastic, one of my highlights, I would have to say.
And when you're teaching theater, or the appreciation of theater to people that are not familiar with it, and a lot of people have never seen live plays. Even though they watch plays on TV or a movie or whatever, they've never actually gone to a live theater. What do you tell them about live theater that makes it different than these other forms?
Well, I tell them, first of all, obviously it's point of view. With a camera, you can go anywhere you want to. You can come up close. You can show the entire thing. With theater, you are in one fixed point of view in your seat, generally speaking, unless you're in immersive theater, which moves you around. But that's a different animal. The type of theater that Silverthorne does, pretty much your audiences are settled in one place. So essentially what I ask people to look for is the interactions between the actors, because you're able to see the entire thing. You're not getting, a close-up of somebody's face and then you get somebody supposedly talking to them, but if you know anything about filming, you know that those two shots may have been filmed completely far apart. When you've got live theater, it's happening then, and the interactions that are going on are happening at that moment. So you are getting a moment in time that will never be repeated, ever. So that's the excitement I feel with live theater. It's also what the audience is giving to it. So an audience that knows to do that kind of concentration can give their energy to the actors, and that's when real theater
Yeah,
sparks.
I agree. When you're sitting in a theater and the audience and the actors there's a vibe that goes there. Actors will say, well, when the audience is with you. And if you're sitting in the audience, when something's going on. And it's a very unique thing. And for example, this play American Son at TheaterWorks, I saw it when it premiered at Barrington Stage. It's a very tight, taut play. And it's been filmed for Netflix, and it's on Netflix now. And you can sit at your TV at home and watch it and get the gist of it. But the tension between the actors and the audience makes it so much of a different animal when you're sitting in the theater and seeing
Right.
it. You just cannot repeat that in the movies.
And also, you're sharing an experience with so many other people. I have to tell you about just for our current production, The Diary of Anne Frank. I was able to secure a grant from Mass Humanities, and with that grant money, because of course everybody reads The Diary of Anne Frank. At some point in their careers, it seems like every English class pulls it out. It's a chestnut. But
backtrack. It is a
Yes.
chestnut, but it is not performed as often as it. I mean, there was a Broadway revival.
Yes.
Maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, with Linda Lavin was in it and other people. I actually have a funny story about Anne Frank. I went to a matinee of that production in New York, and it was full of kids. And the soldiers come in towards the end, and some kid screams out in the audience, they're hiding behind the bookcase. Which, I mean, everybody cracked up.
Right.
But it's a play that people we've aged away from the Holocaust. A lot of people were born well after.
And they don't know.
They don't know what it is.
Do not know. Absolutely. And then that particular production that you're speaking of is it's a newer version, and we actually decided to go with the older version that was actually premiered in 1955. Won the Pulitzer Prize at the time, and many people sort of feel, well, it's a little squishy. Well, not the way we're doing it. It's not squishy. We really we play it for the kinds of tensions, the kinds of challenges that these people faced as well. But as I said, many people think they know the play because of having read the diary when they were in school. Well, we used some of our grant money from Mass Humanities to bring in 36 people from the Literacy Project, which is for adults primarily. It's adults who are just learning how to read, people who never got their GEDs, people who, for one reason or another, they could be immigrants. They could also be just people who were illiterate all the way, got through school, never really learned how to read. We brought in that many people, and also some people from a youth recovery project for our opening night. And we had a pre-show talk from some of our scholars, and then played. That was the best audience we ever had. They were so engaged with these people that they were not sophisticated in their reactions. They laughed at some of them because, of course, some of it was funny. Anne Frank was a brat, basically. She was very much a brat. She developed during the course of the play, and they were very moved by that, but they engaged. These were people who, for theater, they had never been to see theater before. Most of them had never even been to live theater, and certainly not of the caliber that this play was.
Yeah, it's
exciting to see.
Yeah, and it makes a difference how one perceives a play based on the audience that's watching it.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to take another quick break to acknowledge our underwriters, and we're so thankful for them because they've helped in many ways develop this brand new Studio 120 here at the Westfield Technical Academy, where high school students are learning the art of radio and television behind the scenes. And hopefully they graduate, there will be more opportunities to do video and to do radio and television here in Western Massachusetts, which is based on the guests that we have here. The creative economy here in Western Massachusetts is really fueling our quality of life. Lucinda Kidder is our guest today from Silverthorne Theater. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer, and we'll be back after we acknowledge the underwriters.
Underwriting is brought to
Yeah.
you by Boise Cascade Distribution, providing products and services needed for building material dealers, home improvement centers, and industrial customers. They offer everything from engineered wood and plywood to Drex decking and railing, James Hardie siding, and Advantech subfloor. Located at 33 Fowler Street Extension in Westfield and on the web at bc.com, they are committed to providing quality products, great service, convenience, and value.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach. This is Artsbeat Radio and TV. Lucinda Kidder from Silverthorne Theater is our guest today. It's a great theater company up in Franklin County in the little town of Greenfield, which has become a great place to go. Restaurants, now live theater, there's music, and you can get there on the trains,
Yes,
which
you
is
can.
brand new. Have you taken the new train?
I haven't, but we recently had a guest up from New York, and I was very happy to pop him right onto it for a direct run right down to Penn Station.
Yeah, in fact, if you haven't tried the Valley Flyer, which is run by Amtrak, you can get on in Greenfield, Holyoke, Northampton, or Springfield early in the morning on weekdays and run into New York and come back the same day, which if you're a theater buff and wants to go to a matinee in New York, the timing works. And so Greenfield is so easy to get to. And I've been up there quite a bit because, of course, we went to high school just outside of it. And there's some good restaurants in town. And
Fantastic. Actually, we one of the things I did first when we moved into Greenfield was start a dinner plus theater program. I now have 7 restaurants that participate. And basically, if you buy your tickets ahead of time and then go have your dinner before the show, we will reserve seats for you at our dinner plus theater partners. And 4 of them are right in downtown Greenfield. A couple are scattered around other places in Franklin County. That's one of the things that we have tried to do, is to be part of the creative economy and be very conscious of what we can contribute. Because Greenfield has been considered an underserved and relatively economically depressed area, but that's not happening anymore. Things are boiling around. There really are a lot is going to be happening there. It already is happening. Pioneer Valley Symphony plays up there. And we have, as you mentioned, we've got a lot of arts places. We have an arts workspace is going to be opening up in 2020. And I'm working with a group now called LAVA, Local Access to Valley Arts. We're just forming, and we're going to be having a sort of an informal, inexpensive, one-of-a-kind, drop-in place for people to do small performances and to have classes and that kind of thing, so that we can really focus all of the arts and
the Performing Arts Center where you all are based also has a music series, so constantly having concerts.
Constantly. Hawks and Reed, it's now called. They did change their name to Hawks and Reed Performing Arts Center.
Who are Hawks and who are
Well,
Reed?
Hawks and Reed, it turns out, the history is that the building that we are in used to be, in the mid-1800s it was built, it used to be a department store. And they had 4 floors. We're actually in the attic. But the first floor is now a concert venue, and we have, trust me, we have everything from very hard rock to Irish Celtic music. We have, not so many classical people play there, but they could if they needed to. We have pianos available. Hawks and Reed is run by the Goldshire family, and they have just been phenomenal landlords to us. We do not own our space. We perform there, but we don't own it. But in that same place, there's also a pub in the basement called the Wheelhouse, where we have small readings. You can go down there for karaoke. It's just a multi-purpose performing arts center, and it's just been a terrific place for us to perform.
And is there parking nearby?
Oh, absolutely. The nice thing about Greenfield, first of all, it does have a parking garage right next to, about a block away. But also on-street parking is free after 5 o'clock. So when we're performing, most of the time, it's free parking for people. And there are several lots behind the buildings there, parking lots, so plenty of parking.
So you can park and walk to a restaurant.
Absolutely.
And then come to a show.
Very small radius. You don't have to hardly go anywhere.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
That's great. So this play festival that's coming up in the spring, will there be, you said the audience is going to get a chance to offer feedback. Is there an award of some kind?
Well, the award essentially will be to get performed a second time. The first 2 weekends of the festival will be 10 or 11 shows each.
Okay.
Tiny shows, 10 minutes long perhaps. And the same cast will rotate through all the different plays.
Is it fully produced or are they staged reading?
No, this is fully produced.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are sets and costumes and all of that.
But obviously minimalist,
because yeah.
We don't want to be taking up all of our time changing sets. So it'll be minimalist. But then there will be one cast set and one director for each weekend. And then the audience at the time will cast their vote for their favorites out of the group that they saw. And then we will tabulate those. And the third weekend will be the reprise. The top, 10 shows maybe, will be reprised during that third weekend. And essentially each playwright, of course, will receive a certain stipend for having their play used. But the audience does get involved in this, and we do love to have audience feedback in whatever way, that it's discussion. If the playwright's there, we'll often ask the playwright to hang around afterward and talk to the audience, get some feedback. So
it must be very fulfilling for you, having worked in theaters and in school systems and stuff all around, to be able to come back to Greenfield and produce something from scratch.
Yeah.
When you and David Rowland sat down and said, we're going to start a theater company, and to see it 5 years later, and it's growing and expanding, and its audience reach and all is getting bigger and bigger. In your next 5 years, do you envision more of, or do you see a larger season or bigger shows, or do you like the format that you're doing?
I think at this point, I am actually stepping down as the actual director, and we're sending out the direction of the company to a wider base. I essentially was pretty much the person in charge, but I am interested at this point, to having gotten this on its good legs, to see it settle down into a good routine and sort of see what direction. We're coming up with a mix of the type of shows we want to do, and I think next year is going to be a kind of a settling season for us, and then from there on it's a little hard to know.
So will you step down completely, or will you stay?
No, I'll be on the board, and I expect to be running publicity and marketing and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the outreach, the public face in a lot of ways. But it's all that behind the scenes stuff that other people can now take some of the responsibility for.
Yeah, because people don't realize how much goes into
they have
putting
no idea.
an event on the stage.
Right. No, it's a huge undertaking, and I didn't have any idea, as I've never run a professional theater. I've worked in professional theaters, but never been in this position.
When you end up being the number one, and the bills need to get paid, and you have to worry about if there's enough ice in the ice machine.
That's right. It's a lot. It is a lot. And I've been very super happy with being able to step back from a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I work in the arts frequently, and I at least once a year get involved with the big broadcast at Mount Holyoke, which is the recreation of a 1940s live radio broadcast. And I forget I'm responsible for making sure the box office is working and that the ushers are there and they're oriented and all of that.
Right.
And then I do the public relations and marketing for the Capitol Steps and some other things. And that makes me realize how important it is as a reporter to provide the material to other reporters in a way that I'd like to receive it myself. It keeps you grounded.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
so you have that grounding experience from doing that.
Yes, I do. I have a lifetime's working in theater for sure.
Yeah. What is it about theater that keeps you coming back again and again? What does it fulfill for you?
Well, I have to say that it has been pretty much all my life, although I did take a hiatus of about 10 years where I sort of worked more in nonprofit work, but not necessarily theater. Just the opportunities to work with so many different types of people, and I just feel like theater is the perfect vehicle in the arts to get across the human condition, to address the really basic core values that we as a race, as a human beings, need to be addressing, and particularly, obviously, in these times, I feel very, very strongly that we have to be out there, making sure that the walls that to empathy, to sympathy between races and groups and religions and every kinds of walls that we've built up, we have to do our very level best to knock them down as fast as they get built, because this is the only thing that's going to keep us going as human beings.
I totally agree. Lucinda, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're interested in information about the Silverthorne Theater, what is that website again?
Silverthornetheater.org, and it's spelled E-R,
Yep.
Silverthorne, and Thorn with an E. So it's SILVERTHORNE, theater with an E.
Okay.
.org.
Thanks for joining us. Next week, we're going to learn all about Playhouse on Park in West Hartford, which has just celebrated its 10th season. They've got some really interesting plays and musicals coming up. And you've been listening to ArtsBeat Radio and TV on 89.5 FM WSKB and Westfield Community Programming Channel 15. I'm Mark Auerbach. Our chief engineer today is Peter Coles, and we have students from Westfield Technical Academy working behind the scenes here at Studio 120 in Westfield, Massachusetts. We'll see you next week with another ArtsBeat Radio.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Matt.
No, it's all right. I deserve it. I've been foolish.
I have too. Believe me, more than you.
When the moon was young, when the month was May, when the stage was hung for my holiday, I saw shining lights, but I never knew they were you, they were you, they were you.
When the dance was done, when I went my way, when I tried to find rainbows far away, all the lovely lights seemed to fade from view. They were you, they were you, they were you. Without you near me, I can't see. When you're near me, wonderful things come to be.
Every secret prayer,
Every fancy free,
everything I dared My wildest dreams multiplied by two. They were you.
They were you.
They were you.
They were you.
They were
I missed you, Matt.
I missed you too.
Oh, you've been hurt.
Yes?
But you should have told me. You should have told me right away. Here, sit down. Maybe I can bind it.
You've been hurt too.
Yes.
Look, it's beginning to snow.
I know.
Here, take my coat.
No, both. There's room enough for both.